Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where it is currently very dark. Very dark indeed. Luckily we don't need to see anything here, because we need to go to the R&D Center. We have 8,390 science to spend, and what do we want to spend it on? Well, we could clean up all of this. How much would that cost us? This would be 800, and then this would be 1150, so that would be 1950. Honestly, that's not so much. Would we be able to grab deep space probes here? We would. Almost certainly. So let's grab heavy rocketry first. Then deep space probes. Then we'll probably want to grab these science instruments. So this is a radiation survey. And then this is an orbital survey. Cool. So we'll grab all of that. That's most of our science gone, but we can still fill in some of these gaps. So let's grab these back over here, and this is going to help us get more science and push further into space. And with heavy rocketry, we should get the S3 size part and the adapter. Yeah, this is going to help us create much better large rockets. Our current rocket for going into deep space is terrible. Absolutely abysmal. So that looks good. What do we want to do next? What is our next mission? Well, we absolutely could go for better signal. This is just putting an antenna with a probe core around Jool. Now, I should point out, around Jool, we're going to be starting to get some pretty serious diminishing returns from the power of our solar panels, if that works at all like it did in KSP1. So we'll see about that. A vessel on Minmus with a current mass of over 200 tons is planned to be our base, which we're waiting until we've finished out the science tree to really get started on that so that we can build fairly freely. That's fine. Transmitter return an atmospheric survey from Jool. Do we have to enter the atmosphere for that? Probably. We probably do. Just dipping in a little bit, though, should be relatively fine. We can do that simultaneously as we do this, because this is just enter orbit. We can dip in very, very slightly into the atmosphere of Jool, get our atmospheric survey, and transmit that back, and then re-raise the apoapsis, would be the idea. So that seems fine. This is landing a vessel on Duna with a current mass of over 300 tons. Hopefully that will be the base. That's a very, very heavy payload, but hopefully that will be the base. Then we've got this, which is simply launch a vessel with a lander can and perform a crew observation at Copy Rock. Right. So that's a thing. That'll be a little awkward to do. This is very awkward to do. And then there's landed the Mohole on Moho. Now, we don't have to do that with anyone in particular, but we could certainly consider doing this. Alternatively, I'm leaning towards doing this better signal for right now. This is so much science. 5,000 science, plus being able to get ourselves an additional, no, not that one, plus an additional 3,000, puts us back up to that 8,000 number. That's going to get us a sizable amount through the heavy rockets. So that sounds pretty decent. Let's head into the VAB and let's take a quick look at what we've got going on here. So, we're going to want to create ourselves a brand new design for this. We're going to do a probe core for sure. So this is the RCHLO2. What is that size in comparison? And I'm assuming this has a reaction wheel. Let's see here. Shift to view more. Yes, it has a reaction wheel. Okay, so that is fine. What is that in size comparison to our Communitron that we just unlocked? 86 gigameters? This is also 86 gigameters. This is there a difference between a relay antenna and a regular antenna in this game? This is a much higher transmission rate, and it requires less resources as well. So we should probably go with this Communitron. So this is noted. It's quite compact. Quite compact indeed. Okay, so we probably don't need to have this size of probe core. We should be going for a smaller probe, if possible. Maybe like an Octo 2. That's maybe a little too small. Maybe like this guy. That seems reasonably okay. So beyond that, we're going to want to have some amount of fuel on this craft. FL is too small. We're probably looking for the X200 size. Yeah, so something like an X216 here. I'm going to want this to be extraordinarily small. We'll put this guy here. We're going to want to have some form of solar panel on this, for sure. Retractable is probably best since we're planning on dipping into the Jovian atmosphere, or I guess Julian atmosphere. We'll just put those on about like that. And we're going to need to have an atmospheric survey report, right? We probably want to have an additional battery on this. This is very small. I'm going to put it up here for now. Actually, I'm thinking about how we want to do this. Have some kind of a nose cone up here, like perhaps a fuel adapter. Like this. Yeah, that could be a doable thing. A fuel adapter up there would allow us a fair amount of... Yeah, this is still way too small. It would allow us a fair amount of extra fuel over this guy, which is absolutely fine. We would really, really like that. So I'm kind of thinking some strap-on batteries here. So something kind of like this. So that should work for now. And what other fuel adapters would we potentially have? This is not a fuel adapter here. This would be a fuel adapter. It's, you know, kind of tall, but we could definitely do it that way. There's also, we could just truncate the nose cone here like this, and that's probably for the best. That's probably for the best. So we're going to want to retract our antenna and our solar panels once we head in. We're going to need to have some amount of scientific information here. So we should probably... must be flying in low or high orbit here. So this would be an orbital survey report. I would like to have some sort of a payload bay, I feel like, for this. So that's a crew cabin there. We could do a small or medium cargo bay. The cargo bay itself could be attached about here, like this. We would then open up this cargo bay. I would kind of like the antenna to go on the side that doesn't open then. So somewhere around here or so. And then inside of the cargo bay, we could put some experiments. So we're not going to be landing on anything. A sample grabber is right out. A radiation survey we can absolutely grab. That is huge. Okay, hang on. That is really big. Noted. So this is a Science Junior giving us an environment survey. What we want is an atmosphere survey. So something like this guy would be okay. We may want to just put it here at the bottom for right now. So a Science Junior is probably not necessary. A Star Lab is quite huge. Yeah, this requires crew. That is understood. Does this require crew? It does not. I think we'll omit this because of size for the time being. We need an atmospheric survey for sure, but we don't really need anything else. Should we, instead of doing it this way, we could ditch some weight. We could combine this together up here. We would need another nose cone adapter here. So it would be like this nose cone adapter, but then we could put this guy up on top. It would look a little funky, but that's probably fine. And that means that we would be able to omit the survey bay. Like this. We'd be able to put that in like that. And then we just want to have some sort of a very high efficiency engine here, right? And that would end up being probably just a poodle. Like that. Then we'd have a decoupler here. And that would be a TD25 decoupler. Then I would like to have some sort of an interplanetary transfer stage here. This is going to be much higher thrust to weight. So I'm just going to do something like this. We're going to put another poodle engine in here. Like that. And then we'd want to have a fairly heavy rocket going down. So let's put in a medium there. That seems fine. I want to grab this guy and maybe move it up a bit. Yeah, that's not how this works. We need to put it up over here. Okay, so next up, I'd like to have an adapter from medium to large here. Like that. Then, I'd like to go into the fuel tanks, and we're going to go for a couple of large fuel tanks here. We only have this guy. Okay. That is not necessarily, strictly speaking, ideal, but it'll be fine for now. So this is a 400 equivalent. This is an 800. This is two 800 equivalents. Okay, so something along the lines of that. If we were to now put in our largest Rhino engine, max thrust in atmosphere is 1536 compared to a mainsail. Yeah, this is the best engine that we have for this job right now, the most powerful engine. So, what is that thrust to weight looking like? That's a question we should ask here. I also want to merge these stages together and have it be something kind of like this. Okay, so what is this thrust to weight right now? 0.44. I'm not surprised about that. That's very low thrust to weight. That is unsurprising. Liquid fueled for side boosters? I am thinking yes, as of right now. So I'm going to duplicate this and put it out over here. We are going to put in just a pair of side boosters out over here. The question is, do we want to truncate this stage? We might, is the answer. So I'm actually going to get rid of all of this. And we're going to put this guy in right here, like that. Then I want to move this up to about here or so. And then move this right on down. Like this. Now we can definitely add in an extra pair of these if we feel like it. The question then is, what do we have in terms of aerodynamics here? Well, we've got some medium nose cones. We're going to have to do some adapting, I think. Okay, so let's grab ourselves an adapter here. We'll put these right up over here. This is still too big, so we would need to adapt this down further. So something kind of like that, if we wanted to put nose cones on it. So this thrust to weight at this point is what? 0.48. I'm not surprised about that. This is a huge amount of mass, right? So we're going to want to probably shrink these down a little bit. And that's fine. I'm going to take off this. That puts us at 0.5. This point puts us at 0.65. That's getting better. We take these off, and that puts us at 0.72. This is still too low. So we've still got way too much weight on here. We might have to quad couple these and see what ends up happening with that. Why is this no longer mirrored? Okay, that's awkward. Let's take this off of here and see what happens if we quad couple it. So somewhere around here or so. Yeah, that should do reasonably fine. So that's now 0.7 thrust to weight. This is still not enough to get off the ground. Okay. So we're going to have to further reduce this in scope. That means these come off. And this gets attached here. Let's take these off as well. And this is 0.96, 1.75 at that point. That's getting better. We may want to make this stage be a little smaller. That may not be the worst of ideas here. So we would take that off and then get rid of this guy. We would then drop this down in size to be a 32 tank. Yeah, something like this. That's a lot less weight up in that second stage there. So this is now 0.89 in this first stage. Still too heavy. 2.58 once these four detach, though. So that's interesting. We can't really strip this down anymore unless we change the attach point. So if we were to do that, we would do something like this. We'd want these to detach here, drop this down, connect here, go back up to 4x symmetry, and then connect this guy in right about here. Now, that's going to have to be dropped down in its positioning. So that would mean this would have to be taken off and dropped down to about here. So that puts us at, we've got a pretty decent amount of, oh, these are definitely in the wrong stage. We've got a pretty decent amount of delta V here, allegedly. 1.06. So this would get us off the ground at this point, but it would be incredibly slow. I kind of don't want to strip it down anymore, though. However, as a question, what would happen if we run a fuel line? Well, obviously we want to do that. We've always wanted to run a fuel line in like this. So that's all well and good. We can see that this is 1.06 with a 3.5 minute burn, and then this is 0.99 with a roughly similar 3.5 minute burn. Slightly under. That's pretty decent, but we need to get this thing moving a little bit faster. No doubt about this. And let's save this as the Jool probe. Probal, apparently. And yeah, it can be the fly save. That's fine. So, we've got a little too much weight in this still. Where do we want to drop further weight? Well, we definitely could drop weight up in our payload. There is a theoretical option for that, but I kind of don't want to at all. So, if we put this out on the pad right now, it would get off the ground, but it would be incredibly slow. We could assist takeoff with some SRBs. That is starting to get into monstrosity territory. We're already in a little bit of monstrosity territory here, but we certainly could do it. We haven't done any strutting yet. We'll get there. But we could then put in another row of engines here. This is a very Kerbal solution to the problem. And we would put in probably the largest SRBs we've got, which is Clydesdales. So that would be right out over here. About like that. So that is a thrust to weight on its own of 0.95. We move these down to the same point, and that puts us at 1.58. That is a pretty solid thrust to weight, all things considered. Now, aerodynamics would be a bit of a concern here. I'm thinking right now, what would happen if we did this out on these edges? That's 1.54 thrust to weight. That's still reasonable. And then we run a fuel line. We'd need to go into fuel tanks. We would run a fuel line like this. So it would drain from these tanks first, and this tank would empty quite quickly, in theory. So something like that. It'd be a little weird, no doubt about it, but we could try it like that. This is a very strange design. We're still a little bit tech constrained, but let's do some strut work here. So we would do struts in like that, and then struts in here. About like that. And then we shouldn't need any other struts in theory. This is a very, very weird looking design. But I kind of want to try it and see how it works. It's 1.54 thrust to weight, which should be reasonable. And we'll have a fair amount of burn time here. 403 now. This is now saying 244. That shouldn't have changed. This is now saying 15,578 meters per second. I'm not convinced that that's accurate. But let's launch this and see what we've got. I think this will be a very interesting probe launch. It's very, very heavy, no doubt about it. But it also seems very wiggly, but it shouldn't for very long. This is a really wacky looking design. I hate it. I hate it so much. And we're going to launch it. We are, of course, out of here. We don't have any Kerbals in here. So let's go. We're going to be going straight up for the moment. The question is, do we want to do any sort of a gravity turn before these SRBs run out? We shouldn't have quite as wacky of disconnects in theory, but I do want to check to make sure that our fuel flow is going correctly. So let's go into the resource manager here, open our methalox. We should probably be empty in these tanks already. Yeah, we're absolutely empty in those tanks already. So that seems great. And then now we're flowing out from here. Our center tanks should not be draining at all. And indeed they are not. So our fuel flow appears to be correct. That looks good. So now we're just making our way straight on up here. I want to continue to go in this direction until our apoapsis is a little bit higher than this. So continuing to go straight up with these SRBs for the moment. It'll be very interesting to see how this ends up going. I have no idea how this is going to go. None whatsoever. But we'll see how this ends up being. So 250 meters per second. Remember, we don't actually have to recover this after dipping into the Julian atmosphere. We just have to be able to transmit back. But we're going to have to look up what the height of the Julian atmosphere is. That's going to be very interesting indeed. So we're about 30 seconds away from our current position here. We can actually run the experiment here. And we probably should. And then we would want to transmit that back, most likely. So that experiment is in progress right now, but we just want to continue to lift here. We're about 1 minute away. So let's move this over to prograde. And now let's switch over to getting some amount of horizontal DV. So we'll just put this up into prograde. The question is, what kind of an apoapsis are we looking for here, right? Well, for the moment, I just want to hold on prograde, and we're going to hold here until our SRBs detach, and we'll see what that apoapsis ends up looking like at that point. Why is this saying we own... Oh, it's saying this because of our SRB detachment. I was going to say, we have way more Delta V than this in these tanks, but yeah, it's because of the SRB detachment. Okay, SRBs are going to detach now. Do we have a clean detach? Clean detach confirmed. Excellent. So at this point, we're at 77. I want to take this right on over to a horizontal burn right now. And we're going to burn horizontally until we're at about 100 kilometers, which is not all that much further. We're still going to have a significant amount of fuel in these stages. So this is looking really, really good, actually. This is a lot of Delta V, no doubt about that. So we're just burning purely horizontally right now. You can see time to apoapsis is going down, so we don't want to enter a coast phase right now. That is for sure. Now, we do have this atmosphere. The experiment is still in progress. Hang on. Let's see. That's our research inventory there. We would probably want to check specifically this guy. It's still running for a while. This atmospheric survey is pretty slow. So that's noted. We want to spend a fair amount of time in the upper Julian atmosphere. I'm not convinced that we're still going to be in the atmosphere by the time this is done. That said, this is Kerbal. We can do this anywhere. So that's absolutely fine. We've still got a fair amount of horizontal DV to get here, but we're nearly up to that 100 kilometer marker. Time to apoapsis is currently holding. Yeah, left valid region. So that takes a very long time. That is noted. That is... How long were we doing that for? It takes like 3 minutes. So we'd have to be in the Julian atmosphere for quite a long time. Okay. So this is 100 kilometers. It's going up slightly. Let's go ahead and cut that engine for the moment. We're going to want to circularize here, and that will take a little bit of time for sure. Okay, so something along the lines of this would be okay. This isn't super circularized, but we can do it a little bit early. Okay, let's align for that burn, and we can move the burn towards us just a smidgen. Like here or so. That's a little too moved. Yeah, about there. That should be fine. So that's about 1 minute and 15 seconds away. We're working on aligning to it. We've got lots of electric charge at this point, but we absolutely do want to extend our solar panels, which is that these guys? Yes. Now, we're turning very slowly. We do have a reaction wheel, but this is a lot more mass than this reaction wheel is intended to be turning, right? We've got about 1 minute to turn there. And we're slowly making our way over. This reaction wheel is struggling right now, but this is so much more mass that we expect it to turn long term. That's fine. So we're about 50 seconds away from starting this burn. We are attempting to make our way over there, and we're going to make our way there as best we can. But we're going to burn off 838 more meters per second. We've got 1,800 in this right now. So this is pretty overpowered, this first stage. I like it. It's good to have an overpowered first stage rather than an underpowered one. That feels phenomenal. So this is kind of going to be upgraded to our interplanetary transfer stage, and this is just going to kind of exist. So that's fine. We've got about 30 seconds left on this burn. We are still attempting to turn our way over. It is barely perceptibly turning, and that is understood. We're going to burn out about half of the mass remaining here in these side tanks, so that will help matters, but we are struggling to turn at this moment. That said, we'll turn just fine as soon as we throttle up. And we have definitely started to turn a little bit. We've got a little bit of momentum in there. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. And there we turn with our gimbaling without any problem. Cool. So this looks absolutely fine for right now. We're going to be pushing ourselves into orbit with no trouble whatsoever. We just passed the apoapsis here, so technically our timing is a little strange, but it's okay. We knew our timing would be slightly strange. That is not too concerning. So we're just bringing up this periapsis here. We've got about 10 seconds of burn left here to get ourselves properly into orbit. 7. We're actually getting quite an oscillation here. 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Okay, this'll do. This'll do. So we're currently tumbling, and we will be for a while unless we, freeze physics, which we can absolutely do. That's not a problem. And at this point, we are ready to head off to Jool. We've only got 132 meters per second left here in these side tanks, but that will propel us a decent amount of the way out of the Kerbal system. So that would be great. And then we've, of course, got this center tank here, which is going to be a lot less mass, and the thrust to weight on it is going to be mediocre, but it'll be fine. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Shadow Wolf, Atala, Ali Lee, Dark Horse, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Soccerman12UK, Kintogan, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.